Hang on. Take two. Hi, everybody. We are live. We are ready to go. I am excited for tonight's webinar. Super excited. I love these webinars. It gives me an opportunity to kind of direct my focus in new ways. It gives me an opportunity to reach out to amazing experts in different fields that have inspired me and who I just love to have conversations with. And so, although I am doing this for you, I love these opportunities that we have. And one of the reasons why I do is because I really think that, you know, information is awesome. Learning is awesome. It stimulates your brain, which is, you know, we have Wendy Suzuki here who's going to be able to really talk about that. But consuming information is kind of just one of the first three steps. And then there is the understanding of the information that you've learned. And that's when you can teach something back to somebody, right? You can tell them about what you read and what you thought was a great idea in a book. That's an understanding. But what I love and what I get excited about is helping people go from that place of just consuming, like reading a bunch of books and going to a bunch of workshops and kind of like window shopping in this area of spirituality, but those people that want to take it from that ability to consume exciting information, understand it, but then also be able to live it. And it doesn't become wisdom until you put something into practice, until you're not able to just talk about something. You're able to really share an experience about that knowledge. And that's what these webinars are about, and that's why I love them. But if you don't know who I am, let me introduce myself. And as I'm introducing myself, please introduce yourself. Put your name in the chat box. Let us know where you're from. Just say hi so that we know that, you know, we're all here engaged and excited about learning something tonight. So I'm Patricia Moreno. If I haven't met you before, I am the creator of really, I think, which is my life's work so far, the intenSati method, which I love, and I'll share a little bit about that with you tonight. I am a change worker. I help people really harness their power to change and get excited about it. I call it spiritual badassery. Like, I help people get excited about the challenges and the opportunities to build and grow as a being instead of just get goals. I call myself a fitness artist because I love fitness and I love coming up with like weird things that nobody else has ever done. That I love. I'm a mom of 3 young girls, twins that are 4, just turned 4, and a 5-year-old. I'm married to Dr. Callan Mori, and that's it for now. That's plenty, I'm sure. So that's a little bit about me, and tonight we are talking with Wendy Suzuki, and her book is Happy Brain, Happy Life. And I just want to share a quick story about Wendy because I've known her for a while, and I'm going to guess she'll talk about it more maybe when she gets on, but I'm going to guess it's like 10 years ago that we crossed paths. She was taking my dance class, and she just came up to me after class one day and was like, I want to show you a brain. Have you ever seen a brain? And I was like, whoa, sure. And I was like, oh my God, I'm going to hold a brain? This is like the most incredible thing anybody's ever invited me to do. And she was so generous, and she took just me. I felt like so honored. But she took me to the lab, and she pulled out the brain, and she talked about it like it was like this amazing, which of course it is, but her excitement and her enthusiasm about it really opened my mind up to getting curious about the brain and what it does and all of the amazing things about it, because it's such a big part of determining how we live our lives. So after that, she took dance classes with me, very like enthusiastic and just a bright, sweet light. And then she did the intenSati leadership training, which was a big deal for me, being a professor of neuroscience at NYU. I was like, yeah, this is awesome. We have a professor of neuroscience teaching intenSati. What could be better marketing and PR for that? And she's been amazing at helping. Of course, she's spreading her work, but in the meantime, it's a wonderful perk I get that she's introducing intenSati to so many people. We were just telling her today that Italy is like knocking on the door because they read about intenSati from her book, Happy Brain, Happy Life. So she's amazing, and I want to read to you her real intro because you need to know what an amazing woman she is. She is a professor of neuroscience and psychology at New York University. That's the real deal. Her lab studies the parts of the brain critical for memory and how exercise can change and enhance brain functions, including memory, attention, and mood. So already that is so awesome, because if you're studying about those critical parts of the brain that are for memory and being able to teach in these exciting ways, it gives people an opportunity to learn about themselves, but she makes it fun. She makes it really fun. And she also is known for the innovative courses she teaches at NYU, and I know she's put intenSati in those classes too, which is so freaking cool. And she teaches that class called Can Exercise Change the Brain? And Art Meets Brain. And I just realized today, as I was going through her things and looking at her TED Talk again, she's done 4 TED Talks and Moth Talks. So she's getting around. I think she's on a mission to really get more and more people excited about what happens with the brain and just brainy stuff. So I want to let her say hello and tell her a little bit about herself.
Hi, everybody. It is great to be here. So I'm Wendy Suzuki, and as Patricia just said, I'm a neuroscientist and teacher. I think a core thing that I do is I teach. And part of the way that I expanded the way that I teach in the world is by writing this new book, Healthy Brain, Happy Life. It just came out in paperback, and I'm so excited about it. And I will say that I also remember that day, Patricia, when you came to my lab to look at the brain. And I think that a really beautiful link here between your world and my world is a story that I don't know if I've ever told you directly, but one of the ways that you have inspired me was those early days when I was taking not just your beautiful dance classes, but of course your intenSati classes. And I remember coming out of those classes and thinking, I can't wait to go to the next one. I just can't wait till the next class. And so this happened over and over, enjoyed the classes, and then one day I realized, well, I'm a teacher too. I wonder if my students at NYU leave class thinking, I can't wait to hear Professor Suzuki's next lecture. And I thought, you know, I don't think they say that. And I thought, I wonder how I could get that same kind of enthusiasm that I was experiencing in your classes with you as a teacher. And that was part of the inspiration for bringing exercise into the classroom, to try and see whether this could help help the motivation and help the energy. And I can tell you with this class that I developed, Can Exercise Change the Brain, where this is why I trained to be an intenSati instructor, so I could actually bring exercise into the classroom. And I ended up turning it into a whole experiment where I tested the students at the beginning, at the end of the semester, in every class with an hour of intense. Well, it completely transformed the classroom. And because of that, bringing together 2 new things, I really transformed the way that I teach every other class since then, because now I'm not satisfied until I get that high level of enthusiasm. But it was really inspired by going to your classes and feeling that motivation and that feeling like, God, that was so great, I can't come back. I can't wait till I come back. So
that's amazing.
Anyway.
So do you think that your students now feel that? Like, do you have that satisfaction of like, they really do feel that way?
I do. It's the novelty effect. I mean, at first they were a little bit scared. They didn't know whether they wanted to sweat with their professor, and I was, clad head to toe in my best Lululemon on those days. But once they got into it, it's motivating. And the idea was to actually show them what an aerobic exercise can feel like, and then teach them academically about what we know about what physical activity is actually doing to your brain, all the things that are changing, the neurotransmitters, the growth factors, the changes in electrical activity, all of these things, so that it was more of an immersive experience.
Wow, they must have really, like you said before, it's one of those things that for sure they're going to have to remember, because it's so out of the box that doesn't that really stimulate your ability to learn and remember and retain information?
It does. So novelty is absolutely something that is important for memory. Another one is emotional resonance. As you know very well, intenSati brings out a lot of positive emotions, sometimes very deep emotions, and certainly that is not a normal thing that happens in a typical academic lecture classroom. So it's definitely, it was clearly a memorable experience, both for me and for my students.
Yeah, I mean, I can't even imagine having my teacher come out at that point in my life where you're all these new ideas. And I think what I think it's really powerful about that is so many things. One, you're kind of redefining what exercise is, right? That it's not just this means to fit in your bikini, or it's not just the means to this end, or it's something you just got to do, but just the value of it in the moment, and the value of it that's just right after, just the emotional value and the whole thing that's possible. So it's really one of my missions to do that, right, in my time, is to help reshape how people think about exercise. And I think the work you're doing is really doing that, and it's getting people at a critical time, right?
Yeah,
They're
absolutely.
Go off on their own. They have to make their own schedules. They have to now start dealing with their own health in another. So I just think it's amazing that you're doing that. I get so excited when I hear about the work that you're doing and the talks that you're giving, because I just think it's great. I think it's great. Fantastic.
Well, I think that we have beautifully parallel missions, one from a science perspective and one from a spiritual and exercise and motivational perspective that you come from. But kind of to put those same kinds of intentions from the science perspective, what I see as the most exciting and really the most disruptive kinds of ways to use exercise, I think of 3 different levels. And the first is education, because it came from that class. It came from bringing exercise into the classroom. And I had students saying, look, at any other 9:30 class, I'm clutching my cup of coffee, but not in this class. I could come, I could remember. I don't even have to take notes. Now that's very powerful. But that's only one person. But what can we develop an exercise program for universities or high schools or middle schools to fully tap the potential of that? And that's one of my goals, to make NYU the exercise university. But what if you're out of school? I think exercise has the potential as probably the main population that you are in contact with, to enhance people's lives, to enhance their working capacity, to enhance. What if the mood, memory, intention of the entire American workforce was enhanced by exercise? Would that help us as a country?
Oh my God.
Absolutely, especially the mood part. Right now, we all know we all need a mood boost, both here and throughout the world. But maybe even most powerful, I think, is the possibility and the potential of exercise to change for the better how all of us enter older age, where no doubt about it, cognition can decline in older age, but exercise is one of the only things that we know that most people can agree on that can help strengthen the brain through that aging process. So, I mean, I think it's fundamental on so many different levels. And so that's kind of my scientific background. And I'm starting with the education component because I happen to be at NYU and I happen to have access to all these students.
Which is no small thing. And it's amazing because I love that. I love all of those things that you're saying. And it's been interesting and like more than ever, I don't know if I'm just in tune to it or what, but like more people talking just about exercise in this way, right? The value of it and the importance of it and how it's so much more than, you know, this narrow conversation that we used to have about it.
Absolutely.
And it's just exciting because I really, as you know, you've taken my classes, and one of the things that I love about exercise and kind of exactly the opposite of what you said you were doing is I like to bring that novelty in. I like to bring something unexpected. I like to bring pieces that people don't expect to get in the gym. You know, for those of you who don't know, in intenSati, you're literally saying, I like catching myself yell, literally saying affirmations while you're moving, and it totally gets you engaged on a whole nother level so that you're literally activating yourself. You're learning how to, I call it, turn yourself on, like interrupt negative states, interrupt stress, and start literally being the master of your emotions. Because your emotions, if you know that you are stressed out and you're about to go have an important meeting or go home and see your kids or go teach a class, you know you can't be your best in a state like that. We all know that. But to have the ability to be able to have the tools to say, this is not a state that's conducive to the value that I want to give. Let me change my state. Let me shift my state. Let me move this stress, this awareness, and open myself up to another level of another state of being, and using exercise as that, as a regular habitual thing. So what do you think so far about what Wendy's talking about? Can you feel like her excitement? I love her excitement for what she's doing, her passion for what she's doing. So let me know, write in the chat, a comment, feedback. Do you like it? Is it exciting to you? Like, is it, I just feel her energy makes me excited. I love her enthusiasm too. So good. So good. You guys have to get her book, Happy Brain, Happy Life. And not just because she talks about intenSati in there, but it's a really good read because it just gives you a lot of really great tips. Wendy's back.
Yay, here I am.
Awesome. Awesome. Okay, so here's the other part of the webinar. Wendy, anything you want to add before we go?
No, I think we're good.
I think we're good. I do too. Okay, so this is how we roll here. As I said in the beginning, it's not just about acquiring more information. We all have plenty of information. The question is, what are we doing with it? So the goal is always to leave you, in the second half of the webinar, we're going to give our 3 best tips. I am not a neuroscientist, as you all know. So I'm going to give you just tips that I think are good at being able to maybe do what Wendy's talking about, right? Self-awareness skills, tuning in skills, state activation skills. So we're going to go back and forth, but when you hear something that you like, I really encourage you to write in the chat box like, yeah, I love that idea, or just some way for you to engage in the conversation even more fully and share what you're getting so that you'll learn better. Won't they, Wendy?
Yes, absolutely.
Awesome. Okay, so I'm actually going to let you start. I'll let you start with your first tip, what you think people can do or should do to take this.
Yeah, so when I was thinking about these tips, what I decided to do is I wanted to do all 3 tips on the same theme, and that is getting more aware of how to do self-experimentation, because I think that's a new way to approach maybe some of the same things you're going to talk about. And so the first challenge, their tips/challenges, is to look at 3 different kinds of exercise that you do, or pick 3 different kinds, maybe some you do and some you don't do, and really try and figure out how are they benefiting your brain function. And you say, well, how do I do that? choose a brain function you want to be better. Maybe it's memory, maybe it's focused attention, and just observe after these workouts in a systematic way how a particular exercise thing, you can do kickboxing once, I started swimming recently, and I did African dance. So those would be my 3. And after that, either the hour after or perhaps the day after you've done this, can you notice any difference? Just start to become aware of that. And that is kind of the first step of the same kind of self-experimentation that I talk all about in the book, Healthy Brain, Happy Life.
You know what I love about that tip too? Again, it comes back to what we were saying earlier, a new way to look at exercise, a new thing to pay attention to, not just like how many calories did I burn, how many steps did I walk, like, no, really investigating, get curious about all the other things that happen when you exercise. And that's kind of really what you're asking them to do, right? Like pick something. And I'll tell you, I've never really thought about it like that. Like I know that when I'm feeling stressed and I have to write something and it's not happening, I go work out, right? I know if I'm going to have a big day that, I don't know, a test or an audition, whatever it is, I know that my number one best thing to be present and feel good is exercise. But I love this about, because can I tell you, I really didn't think that memory, I really am feeling like a strain of having to remember things more. Like I can feel like it's almost like a jump start, right? Like sometimes I just have to take a little longer to pull a name out or to simple things. But I'm really feeling it. And so I'm wondering too, if just bringing attention to it when I exercise and say, okay, as I exercise, the brain function that I want to strengthen is memory. And do you think that would have an effect?
I think that I can tell you the findings from exercise studies. It's clear that a single bout of aerobic exercise, many studies have shown, significantly improves your ability to focus your attention and your mood, okay? But attention is critical for memory. So if you're able to focus your attention better, then your memory will be better. So my approach isn't about intention, which I've studied a lot and I totally believe in, is about what are the studies, what do the scientific studies show you? And the scientific studies show you that your attention and your memory are better, but you can get to a lot of other things through better attention and better memory, better attention, better mood.
So I'm going to go to mine, and it's kind of the same, right? There's kind of a similarity to it, which is I'm talking, I think the second one is really to notice, pay more attention to the thoughts you're having, the types of thoughts that you're having, right? And to start practicing being the observer of your thoughts, which is what meditation is, right? But this curiosity, it's more from a curious standpoint, like, what am I thinking, right? You find yourself feeling negative or stressed or fearful, and instead of letting that cause you to do impulsive behaviors or reactions because you're in this heightened state where you maybe feel very uncomfortable, is to pause and be curious. What am I thinking right now that's causing me to focus on something that's causing me to feel upset? So that level of awareness and engagement with your own thoughts, and go, what am I thinking? Not try to get rid of negative thoughts, but just kind of think about, I read once in Power versus Force, he described our thoughts as like a parade of options. Like, just think of it as a conveyor belt, and there's just options and options and options, and you can take the milk, or you can take the eggs, or you can take the greens, or you can take the cookies, but if that thought is not going to do you any good, just don't take it. Don't take it off. Just let it pass on by. And I really like that, because it's about moving back into that place where we will most effectively live if we're able to not get always just wrapped up in the emotions, but like, oh, negative thought. Thank you, mind, for sharing. Oh, fearful thought. Okay, I heard you. I got it. Moving on. Instead of believing everything you think, right? And like falling in love with all of the things you think, like they're options. You can learn to move back and let it go. And I think that when we're talking about this area of life, developing a trait, right, where for me, it's really about how do we become that person that we want to be? How do we develop those skills of being able to make that kind of change in our lives? And I think that with this one, it's an essential piece of that toolkit, because without having that level of self-awareness, you really are on automatic so much of the time that you spend more time regretting than choosing. So my tip number 2 is be aware of those thoughts. Don't get caught up in those fear and negative thoughts. Don't try to like erase them from your whole being. Just let them go. That's my number 1. So your number 2.
Okay, so my number 2 is very related to this. So it's again using this self-experimental technique. And my second tip / suggestion is that you do this with your favorite meditation. So do it for several days. Not pick something. I'm going to give you something. Look at your stress levels after your meditation, in like the hour or 2 after the meditation, and notice, is it helping? Is it not helping? If the answer is it's not helping, then the next step of the experiment is maybe to expand the meditation, or perhaps to change a meditation. You might move from a breath-based meditation to an open monitoring meditation, or try a Deepak Chopra and Oprah, one of my favorites, guided meditation, and see whether that's really affecting your stress levels. So that's my tip number 2, to again, try and bring more self-experimentation into your life.
I think we're on the same vibe, right?
Yes.
Let's see what else I have for you. I'm going to give you my second one, which is about tuning in again. As we're talking about taking on this level of self-awareness and understanding ourselves, I think based on what which is what intenSati is based on, it's learning how to self-generate new states of being, right? So what I teach is that a state is determined by what you're focusing on, right? Is your attention on what's right, or is your attention on what's wrong? Are you looking at like that typical glass half empty or glass half full? What are you focusing on? What's your physiology? Like, what's your posture? What's your facial expression? How are you walking? How are you moving? Is it with energy and enthusiasm and a pep in your step? Or is it kind of like slow, with shoulders slumped, iPhone in your hand, hair like this, right? Like totally disengaged from your life, and that your physiology and your facial expressions and the way that you speak to yourself in your head, what you're focusing on, all of this determines how you feel in any given moment. But most of us just kind of take whatever comes. Oh, I hit traffic, I'm stressed. Oh, I got a good phone call, I'm happy. Oh, that class is sold out, I'm pissed off. Oh, the weather's nice, I feel good again, like a ping pong ball. But instead, understanding that we have the ability to notice where we are, take it in, look at our thoughts, and then say, what state do I want to be in? What state do I want? How do I want to feel right now? And developing that skill and that muscle to say, you know what, I am done feeling depressed, or I am done feeling stressed, or you know, the quality of my life, I want to improve it. I have to start with how I feel versus trying to get something to make me feel better. I'm going to learn to feel better so that I can make the decisions that support the continuation of this level of consciousness. So I think that went around in big circles, but my main point here is if you're feeling stressed, if you're feeling down, don't just wait till that state like dissipates like you hope a cloud will. Like, encourage it to move on. Accept where you are. I'm not feeling very good. I'm stressed. And then say, well, how do I want to feel? I want to feel confident. So you put yourself in a state of confidence. You draw your shoulders back. You maybe put a smile on your face, even if it feels fake, or you put a pencil in your mouth. which causes you to do a smiley thing and start going, okay, today's the day. Today's the day. It's happening today. Whatever it is that you can do to like move yourself into a different level of energy, you're going to start to see that you can actually influence and participate in your experience of your life on a day-to-day basis. And you don't have to lose the weight yet, and you don't have to get the contract yet, and you don't have to find the love of your life yet. But you can actually manage your state regularly so that, here's what I heard. I read this in Dan Siegel's book, which I thought was a great line, which he was talking about, that if you mindfully activate states, right? If you use mindfulness and you tune in and then you change your focus and you activate a different state on a regular basis, that state will become a trait. What do you think? Do you agree?
Yes, absolutely. Habits are can be very, very powerful. And if you can do it on a regular basis and kind of put that into your neural circuits, that becomes what you do. That becomes what you do.
Isn't that exciting? I mean, I just think, you know why? You know, I'm always thinking about intenSati. So this is what I've been sharing, is like, this literally is a tool to help you change your personality. Because if you're changing, if this generation of this positive state of confidence, of courage, of enthusiasm, of love, of acceptance, if you're doing this and you're generating it, it literally changes your personality, because that state becomes a trait. And once it's a trait, it's your identity. It's how you identify with yourself. And once you identify with yourself as being enthusiastic and capable and unstoppable and persistent and loving enough with this kind of exercise, I know it sounds like I keep going amazing for intenSati, but it just is. It really is. And it's so powerful that we have the privilege as human beings to be able to do that for ourselves. Like, we can do that. We can exercise so that our brain changes. We can improve our memory because we decide to. We can interrupt stress states. We don't have to wait for somebody to tell us something for us to like be happier people. We have the privilege of being able to do it today for like no reason at all. Nothing. And I just think that really getting people to understand that and to work that as a muscle is what I'm excited about. Super excited about, as you can tell. So is it your turn or my turn?
I think it's my turn for number 3.
Yes.
You just gave number 2.
Okay. Good.
Okay. So my number 3 is my favorite one, which is a self-experiment in joy. And so here is a kind of, again, a tip and suggestion that you do, is you explore what brings you joy, because that's one of the most important experiments that you can do in your life. And everybody has a list, 5 things that make them happy. For me, it's fresh watermelon in the summer and Broadway shows and a great meal in a wonderful restaurant in New York. But make that list explicit. And then my challenge to you is try and expand that list. Try and get really deep in the things that bring you joy. And if you go into the neurosciences of what happens, we know that there are certain neurotransmitters that are associated with that feeling of pleasure and joy. And the one that most people have heard of is dopamine. And it's not quite as simple as anytime you feel joy, dopamine goes up. But, you know, when you have sex, dopamine goes up. When you eat chocolate or drink red wine, dopamine goes up. So there's an easy thing to remember. So my tip number 3 is to experiment in all the things, both familiar and unfamiliar, that bring you joy. And you can read more about the neurobiology of what's happening in your brain in those pleasurable states in my book.
And so why is that important for us to know? Like, why is that, obviously, it's great to know what gives us joy and exploring it. But I'm wondering, knowing that, okay, here's the question I have.
Okay.
Knowing that, and like that's great information, right? I like to know that. How does knowing that translate?
Well, that's a great question. And the reason why I wanted to share that is kind of part of my journey was becoming more aware of the effects of things on my life. It started with exercise, and it extended to meditation. But then it became more intentional. And what do I really want? I don't just want to do more exercise. I want to feel more joy, and exercise does bring me joy. And so it's just, again, a different way to approach this idea of how do you become more aware of things that will make your life better. And for me, personally, what worked was paying much more attention to what was bringing me joy. And again, coming back to the self-experimentation. Not taking it for granted, oh yeah, I always know, I've always loved Broadway, yeah, I know that. But really appreciating that and kind of characterizing that in a scientific, even quantitative way is a way to it's a form of self-love. If you really understand that at a deep level. And I feel like that's part of what I have grown into, is really appreciating and knowing the importance of what brings me personally joy.
I love that. I really wonder. I'm hearing enough feedback. Do you hear me?
No, I don't hear feedback.
So I'm wondering, what about even flipping that, just playing with this idea that what if once we were in a state of joy, I don't even know if this is possible, right? But we're in a state of joy and we're saying, joy is my natural state, right? Feeling good is my natural state. What is it that I let steal me from my natural state? I feel joy. My goal is just, this is how I feel, at ease, appreciating life, like conscious. What can we notice those moments that we let traffic steal that from us, and is it worth it, right? Or that phone call, or that comment, or that side glance, right? If we're, instead of trying to get joy, if we're holding joy and we're saying, this matters to me, this matters to me, it's not worth giving this up for that, versus, not versus, this is a curiosity, right? A question, a way to contemplate that from another angle.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking most people don't feel joy very often. It's actually would be harder for people to do it the way that I'm saying, right? I'm just thinking about that right now. I think we think so often we have to cultivate joy or do something, and there are of course those things that bring us joy, like exactly what you're saying, like taking a moment to appreciate. Of course, I like Broadway shows, but no, like really take a moment to share and to feel the awakening of that appreciation. But I think it's, as I'm saying it, I think it's a muscle, right? I think it's a way of developing oneself and one's level of self-awareness, that it's kind of like a game that you can play either way, and either way works well.
I read this great article. It was in the Sunday Times. It was a conversation between a journalist and Natalie Portman, and it was just through email. So they did it. They just published all their emails to each other. And one of the things the journalist said was that one of the games he plays with his kids is called Crossing the Wonder Line. And if they cross the Wonder Line 5 times, they get to choose what movie they watch, and they get a free ice cream. They get ice cream. And Crossing the Wonder Line is coming up with 5 things that really made your head cock and say, wow, that's amazing. But it has to be real. And I thought that was such a beautiful thing to start training your kids to look for that because you get a prize if you not only get the prize of being in wonder 5 times, but if you tell your dad about it, he gives you an ice cream. So I thought that was great. We should all do that for ourselves. We reward ourselves with an ice cream if we cross that wonder line 5 times.
Yes, and we're really going to need a lot of exercise. But I think
low-fat ice cream.
And I love curiosity and wonder, and I think you're right. Like, we can get so robotic, really. Like, all of us are busy, and we have the things we want to do, and we have the things we have to do, and our day gets filled very quickly, and we lose many times those opportunities to like get curious and expand. And it's one of the great things about having kids. Questions, and you realize you say something and they have no idea what you're talking about. And you have to explain. Like, it was funny, Natalia Petrozella, you know who she is. She's an intenSati leader. She posted something that her daughter said, "Mommy, is Hillary tired? She must be tired." And then Natalia's like, "Why do you say that?" She goes, "Because she's been running for no. Is Hillary president yet? Is Hillary president yet?" And he goes, "No, why?" She goes, "Because she's been running for a long time. She must be tired." Like, isn't that funny? But like, when we're young and our mind is different, right? It's curious. It's wondering, it's learning, and I think that's a big part of staying youthful.
Yeah, absolutely.
Curious and going to new places and getting out of your routine, and because it brings life back in you, and it brings joy, like you're saying, and that ability and that wonder. So whether it's like, we just came back from Italy, we were there for a week with the girls, and it was just like one of those kind of hilarious, but very, like, we rented this car and we thought it was a minivan, like our minivan here, and we get there and it's like this humongous bus that looks like a big ice cream. Oh! Helen can barely drive. It's like a stick shift, which we didn't like. Just funny, weird things. Then the car got stolen on the last day that we were there. Oh, no. I mean, like, these are experiences that, of course, they're funny, but they're new places, and it brings like the funniness and the joy of life. So I think that my last tip would be that too, kind of like piggybacking on yours, is look for things to do that you don't know how to do yet. Like, look for opportunities to be really bad at something and to just learn, like loving the learning, loving the total engagement. Like when we got this car and it was that big truck, right? I could tell Kellen loves to drive. She always drives. She's always the driver in the house. But in this thing, right? Plus we don't know where we're going, and it was just like everything you could imagine. But I see her sitting upright, right? So she's driving the car. Usually she's driving like this, or like that, you know, whatever. She's driving like this, and I can see, right? The posture is up. She's not leaning back. She's like dead focus right on. But it's that kind of thing, right? Like, oh my God, different. We even went against traffic one time.
Oh God.
I'm telling you, like, crazy. But like you said, memories and being able to go in and take a class that you don't know and let yourself learn and let yourself struggle through it and let yourself just like work your brain and your focus and your willingness to like look ridiculous. And make it mean you're dumb or you can't like understand the process of learning and what you have to go through, because that's why most people don't want to do it anymore. It's because they want to look silly, right? So that's my last tip of like, do something new, something fun. Come and take intenSati if you haven't taken it. That'll be something new. Right? I have one more question for you.
Okay.
Which is interesting to talk about too, is I just read the book, or I'm in the middle of reading The Talent Code. Have you heard this?
No.
The Talent Code. So they're talking about about how people acquire talent, and that it's really the myelin that's around the fibers that determines your level of skill or talent, and that what helps more I'm totally making this up from my memory, right? So
Okay.
as I said, I'm just trying to regurgitate what I think I know. That the amount of myelin determines your level of skill, and so what they're really talking about in the book is the importance of what I think he calls it deep practice, right? Deep practice meaning if you're learning an instrument, you don't just play the piece of music 10 times and that's your practice. You play the music. When you get to a place that you don't know, you stop. You play it again until you get to that till you learn that piece, and then you go over until you find another piece that you don't know how to play very well, and then you stop, versus just playing to put hours in. So the difference of practice versus deep practice is that intense focus, but that struggling through something, that actual like pausing and struggling through it and spending time in that intentional way helps develop the myelin. Does that sound right?
Well, we definitely know that myelin can be stimulated by motor practice. So certainly musical instrument practice might be is consistent with that. I think it's an oversimplification. There's lots and lots of things that are happening, not just with the myelin. So myelin is a kind of insulation that allows the neural electrical activity in the brain to go faster, to get from one neuron to the other faster. And absolutely, motor practice can increase the myelin. But the other thing that's happening is that brain cells not only have their output structures with myelin, this insulation thing, but they have dendrites, which are the input structures. And what's happening with learning is the dendrites are growing, they're making new connections. So there's lots going on there, and I'm sure this is correct in terms of the behavioral output. I don't think that all those details are known, so you can say absolutely here's what's happening with deep learning versus more superficial learning. It's part of what's happening in deep learning, but I certainly would think that it's true that there's different outcomes to different forms of practices, and we probably, my guess is we probably need much more experimental work to be able to say definitively, here's what the myelin is doing in deep versus non-deep learning.
I love when you talk like that, like evidence. I love it. I love it. Okay, so we have a question. So the question is, are there instances when mental power can overpower the hardships caused by physical health? I'm not fit, adrenally fatigued all the time. Can I consciously talk myself into being healthy?
Consciously talk yourself. Okay, well that's a really interesting question, and psychologists have been studying what's called mindset, which is basically your belief system, and how much that can have a real physiological effect on your body. So this is exactly what this person is asking about. Can my mindset change my physiology? And well, I can't answer that particular instance. Let me give you two examples of where they have shown clearly that mindset is changing two things pretty impressively. One is that you can have a significantly better response to anesthesia if a doctor in a white lab coat administers the anesthesia to you versus the same exact dose given automatically by the drip IV in your arm. And so that is the idea that if you see a doctor giving you something, it's going to have a better effect. And physiologically, it's absolutely correct. Or that's exactly how it happens. The second example is actually my favorite example, where they took a bunch of hotel workers and told half of them that, in fact, we analyzed your behavior, your activity, and you're doing above what the Surgeon General deems is what you should be doing to get your daily dose of activity, and the others were told nothing. And after that 5-minute presentation, 3 months later, the ones that had that were told that piece of information lost significantly more weight. They were doing exactly the same thing, but their mindset said, I am exercising well. The Surgeon General thinks that I am exercising well. So I think mindset is very, very powerful, and I've thought about mindset in terms of the power of what Patricia's created for intenSati because what you're doing is you're shifting everybody's mindset. That's exactly what you're saying 5 minutes ago, that you can change your personality, you're changing your mindset. And so the question is, what are the limits of how mindset can be changed? And that's an experimental question. There are researchers that are working on this. Aaliyah Crum at Stanford is somebody that's doing beautiful work. She did both those studies that I mentioned, and I'm also very interested in mindset, though we haven't studied those questions right now. So my answer is yes, it's very powerful, and there is a possibility, but those are the kinds of things that we know now scientifically.
Well, I think it makes sense too with, if your body's in a stress state versus a relaxed state, right? And how that affects your health. I mean, it's significant. And I know that, I don't know if you've heard this story before. It's kind of like off a little bit, but it's the same conversation. Well, I write in my book that when I was 12 or so years old, I don't remember how old, that I had a bone marrow infection.
Yes, yeah. Yeah.
So I had a bone marrow infection in my arm. I was in the hospital for a couple of weeks, and the doctors were saying the infection was moving to my heart, so that if the next day it wasn't showing to be improving, they were going to go do exploratory surgery, and there was a possibility they would have to amputate.
Yeah.
And my dad was someone who was very much into mindset and visualization and the power of the mind and the brain, and he came in the night before and he did a visualization with me where he had me imagine this army of men marching into my arm and then scooping out the infection and carrying out the infection. It was the whole experience. And the next day the infection was gone. And I didn't even remember that story for many, many years, because that happened when I was 12. I didn't really get the value of that until I was creating intenSati, and I was 30 years old. And I remembered that experience. And for me, there's so much. You could say, oh, it's coincidence, or oh, it's this, but there is something to our ability to put ourselves in a state that can influence the way that our body is healing, right? I mean, because if your body is in a relaxed state and you're feeling calm, your body can do what it knows how to do. And when it's stressed, it doesn't have all the energy that it needs to go to that act of healing. Right. So I don't think you can talk yourself into it, saying, I'm healthy, and just have it's just having these words. But I do think that your focus, your language, what you believe about what's possible absolutely impacts what happens.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think a really important question is going to be understanding the bounds of that relative to all the disease states that are out there. So stress is one thing, cancer is another. How far can you go? And how much can you affect the physiology, and when can you intervene, and when do you need to use it in conjunction with other things? That's going to be very, very powerful. But I totally agree that is a powerful tool that we need to understand and be able to fully harness and because it can be applicable in so many different situations.
But I love how there's more science in that. Like before it would be like, that was just crazy nonsense, right? And I think that now I just love, it's just becoming more mainstream, and there is more research about it, and there are more studies done, and people are taking it more seriously.
Right.
And understanding the power that we really have to impact and influence our own health through the way that we focus and think and intend and exercise.
Yeah.
So any final thoughts? Anything you want to leave people with in this conversation?
No, I mean, I love the theme of moving beyond the effects of exercise only on your physical body, and it's so important. But exercise has an overall effect, and your brain is part of your body, and I think that effect is so powerful and less appreciated than it should be. And I think that practitioners of intenSati are perhaps one of the most aware of this, because you are bringing in the power of mindset and combining it with exercise. So you're really taking full advantage of the mind-body connection. You're using all of those chemicals that are being generated peripherally with exercise, with physical exercise, and at the same time you're giving those wonderful positive intentions, so that in all the ways that your mind can influence your body in the positive ways, that you are strong and you are powerful, that you are doing that at the same time. So that's what I've always thought was so powerful about the intenSati method when I was first a student, and then a teacher, and now starting to look at some of these things from a scientific perspective, and kind of trying to break it down. Still is just as powerful, but now being able to look at it in this new way, that's what I get most excited about.
Yeah, I get excited about it too, because, you know, for so many years, like a lot of rolling of the eyes, I'm like, what? And then, you know, the more science that comes out, I think the more people will be excited to participate, which, of course, I always want more of. So I think we should wrap it up. And I think that now would be a good time for you to share about how people can find you, do your course.
Yes, yes. So I'd like to share two things. One is my website, which is www.wendysuzuki.com. You can find out all about the book. You can find all about my lab and the research that I'm doing, both on memory and exercise, and all links to all the talks and lectures that I've given about all about neuroscience. That's the first thing. And the second thing I'm so excited about is a wonderful company called The Big No has developed a free online course based on my book. And let me just show you. This is the paperback copy of the book, Healthy Brain, Happy Life. And that course, that free e-course, is going to be available very, very soon. And so you can go to The Big Think, one word, thebigthink.com, and you can scroll down and find my e-course. You'll recognize a picture of me, and I think it's going to be beautiful. They took some beautiful images, and it's all about the major lessons in the book. So I'm really happy about that.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. Is that it? Anything else you want to share? Do you have a newsletter or anything people can?
Not a newsletter, but everybody can go to my website, sign up for regular announcements, and where I'm speaking and things like this free e-course. And we don't email you very often, but you can kind of keep in touch with the things that are going on and the science of exercise that way.
Oh, that's great. And then you're on Twitter.
I'm on Twitter. I'm on Facebook. Yes, Facebook and Twitter. Oh, and Instagram.
And Instagram. No Snapchat for you yet, huh?
No, not Snapchat. Not right now.
Oh, too many. Well, I think what I like to share with everybody is to think about being an intenSati leader. Like, I want more people bringing this practice, and you see that how creative Wendy's been with using it and bringing it out, and there's so many ways that you can use this practice in your own life, but also is a tool for other things that you do in other ways to help people. So we're going to be doing a new one in the fall. So if you want to find out more about leadership training, send us an email. We'll put you on a list that as soon as the date comes out, you'll be the first to know. And what else? we're doing a Saute summer tour, and we just decided we were going to go on the road, but we're only going about as far as Jersey these days. But we'll be expanding that. It was like the beginning of the summer. I'm like, let's do a tour, and then we booked some dates. So if you're in Jersey, Edgewater, I don't know where. You'll have to go look at the events page. I don't know exactly where we're going to be next, but we would love to have you there. And if you have a place that you'd like to invite us to, and we could come to you, email us too, and we'll come. We are going on the road. And I think that's it. It's a pleasure, Wendy. I really wish we could stay on another hour and just chat. I love this conversation so much. You guys get her book. It's really good. And go watch her 4 TEDx talks, because she does intenSati with these people, and it's just amazing. I love it. That's it. Thank you, for doing the back end stuff, and sorry you guys for all the technical difficulties, but if you missed any part of this, make sure you go back and listen, because it all was golden for sure. Thanks, Wendy. So good.
Thank you, Patricia.
Have a good
So
night,
much fun.
everybody.
Bye.